Star Trek, From Ashes and Darkness by Heartlocket1004. Chapter 15, Split Ends Year 2259. No, Jim winced, and Carol and Scotty both physically flinched at the raw agony in the two arguments' voices, their joint screams ringing loud and clear even over the Vengeance's shrill alarms. Asha appeared to have gone into momentary shock, staring at the screen where her whole family had just been blown up before her very eyes. Khan, however, reacted more violently. Target Enterprise, Khan snarled viciously, and Jim's jaw dropped. Weapons compromised, the computer replied, but Khan snapped, Target Enterprise. Khan, wait, Jim shouted in alarm, while Scotty said hastily, now, wait just a minute. Khan, Asha, please, Jim went on, but Khan didn't even budge an Asha. Jim's blood ran cold when the redhead turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd met her, Jim Kirk realized that Asha Sanders was without a doubt an augment. He'd found she could be kind, warm, and even charming, but now, he could see all too clearly the formidable warrior she must have been once. Asha's green eyes were filled with a bright and burning fire, her expression filled with grief but also a terrifying anger. It almost matched the expression on Khan's face, but while the male augment's face was contorted with fury, the female's face was drawn tight and clenched. And the instant Jim saw her face, he knew. Hers was not the face of a girlfriend, or even family member, it was the face of a soldier awaiting the signal from her commanding officer. There was no negotiating with this person. Khan, please, it wasn't us. You know it couldn't be us, Jim cried, glancing between the enraged augment and the Vengeance's screen where they could see the damaged controls working to point the Vengeance's weapons at the crippled Enterprise. No, it wasn't you, it was the former head of your Starfleet, Khan snarled, his eyes narrowed into slits. For 1 whole year, your Starfleet kept me under a leash by using my family as hostage, and now, they are dead, so let me respond in kind. Khan stood at his full height, the anger and grief almost radiating off of his impressive person as he declared, I will rip every single one of you and Marcus's precious Starfleet into pieces. Khan, no, Jim begged, while Asha stepped up stoically behind her lover and leader, taking his second-in-command position as she stared at Jim without sympathy. Wait, Scotty added, raising his hands in alarm, when Spock's voice called urgently across the comms as he managed to regain their connection after the explosions. Captain, Jim, is everything all right? Is anyone hurt? Spock, the torpedoes were shot and now Khan's about to blow up the Enterprise, Jim yelled back warningly, and Asha's eyes flashed with anger while Khan took a menacing step towards the blonde man. Targeting Enterprise, confirm order, the computer announced, and Jim yelled, no. But neither Khan nor Asha were moved, as Khan began, confer. Khan, if you want what is best for your crew, I would recommend you desist from such action immediately, Spock's voice called. Jim and Scotty shot the comms incredulous looks at Spock's terrible timing, while Khan bared his teeth in utter fury. Say goodbye, Mr. Spock, Khan spat, his voice actually trembling with anger while Jim's eyes went wide in alarm. Asha however had paused, a frown appearing on her face. Even in her anger, she wasn't immune to the knowledge that, while Spock was, apparently often, insensitive, he was far from illogical, so why had he said? Her mouth then dropped open, as did all of theirs, when Spock interrupted monotonously, the torpedoes are yours, Khan. For a moment, there was utter silence in the Vengeance bridge as Spock's words sank in, and then, as everyone grasped the Vulcan's meaning, they all erupted. You asterisk 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 asterisk, Khan swore in Hindi, while Asha's closed in disbelief and relief, and Jim breathed, Jesus, Spock, you son of a bye. Way to go, Spocky, Scotty cheered over Jim, while Carol gasped, I don't believe it. Captain, Spock's voice called warily, and Jim called back tiredly, hang on. The blonde captain then turned warily to the two augments, who remained stonily in the center of the bridge. Khan's face was twisted as though he seemed unable to decide whether he was more angry or more relieved at Spock's revelation, while Asha's legs apparently had given up on her as the redhead sat on the edge of the ledge to the captain's chair platform. So, you two okay? Jim asked cautiously, wincing when Khan gave him a glare. If looks could kill, he'd have been dead 10 times over today. Asha meanwhile let out a deep breath, her entire body sagging as she bit out, do we look okay, Kirk? I thought my whole family was dead for a moment there, would you be okay? Yeah, sorry, Jim admitted, wincing again as Khan continued to give him a withering look, it's just. We're crashing, Scotty interjected, pointing at the screen. They all looked over to see that, just as Scotty had pointed out, the Vengeance was starting to tilt, the warning alarm still blaring loudly all around them. Not only that. The Enterprise, Carol gasped, and Asha called sharply, Khan. Counter order to target Enterprise, Khan ordered instantly, and the Vengeance instantly desisted from almost firing on the other ship where his crew still remained aboard. Vengeance, status report. Ship failing, sir. The computerized voice replied instantly as images of the spaceship's plans popped up onto the screen for them to see. Engines at critical 20% and dropping. We'll end up crashing back on Earth, Asha muttered as she stood up beside Khan once more, and Jim added worriedly, so will the Enterprise. He gestured to his damaged ship as it, too, began to tilt dangerously on the screen in a similar manner to the Vengeance. It looks like the ship's emergency power's at less than 20% there, too, Scotty noted, and Jim turned to Khan and Asha. Look, I know things have changed, he said urgently, staring at the two augments pleadingly, but I meant what I said about giving you your crew back safely, and if you two are still willing to make a compromise, we can save both our crews. Khan's eyes were narrowed once more, his lips pursed tightly, but unlike before there was none of his wariness in his manner. Instead, he appeared to be thinking. Asha had a similar expression on her face, having fully calmed down after her sharp anger, and she said with a glance at Khan, if we get over onto the Enterprise, will we still be able to fix it? If we could reroute the emergency power from the warp core, Scotty piped up, and Khan agreed guardedly, even with the damage, the Enterprise would be able to keep adrift if the warp core is in sufficient working order. But the Vengeance, Asha checked, and Khan confirmed grimly, the engines and stabilizers are too damaged, there is nothing we can do. Okay, so we all scurry over to the Enterprise, the Vengeance has enough power to transport us, you still help us, and we all live anyway, easy, Scotty suggested, his tone clearly suggesting he saw no other problem with his idea. Then why do I hear a but coming? Jim asked, looking at the two augments pointedly. Khan was frowning, still in thought, while Asha nodded as she pointed out, the Vengeance will free fall onto Earth. Once it hits the atmosphere, it'll start to burn, and once the Earth's gravity kicks in, it'll also gain momentum. Basically, it'll be no different than a meteorite, a really big meteorite. If it falls on a city, it could obliterate the whole town, Carol realized, and Asha nodded. Okay, not easy, Scotty muttered, when Jim interrupted. What if someone tried to maneuver the Vengeance as it's crashing, stop it from landing on people? Are you volunteering, Captain? Khan asked, a touch of sarcasm in his tone. But Jim remained firm as he answered, staring right into Khan's blue eyes, if I have to, I will. I'd do anything for my family as well, Khan. Khan raised a slight brow, looking mildly impressed by Jim's declaration, but Asha shook her head. You'd never survive the crash, Asha pointed out, but, she glanced at Khan again, we could. Jim paused, weighing the implied offer carefully in his mind. Khan appeared to be doing something similar as he looked down at Asha while she looked up at him, the pair conversing silently. Carol and Scotty watched uneasily, waiting on bated breath as with every second both spaceships threatened to fall out of the sky and into Earth's atmosphere. Asha, you take Kirk and his officers back to the Enterprise, Khan ordered suddenly, making Jim frown while Asha pursed her lips. Aid them in stabilizing the ship, and ensure our crew remains safe in their hands. Kirk, I am trusting you to uphold your end of our initial agreement, do not make me regret that. Yeah, Jim scowled, offended at the lack of faith, but, what are you going to do? I will attempt to steer the Vengeance into an ocean, away from civilization, Khan answered as though it were obvious, which, to Asha, it was. Jim, however, was uncertain, but before he could argue Khan cut across him as he reminded, we have very little time, Kirk, either you can go now and save both our crews, or I will gladly let you volunteer to take my place and I will go save my crew with Asha. And while I have no real objection to that plan, Asha added, I do think I'd prefer if we all lived through this endeavor. Jim paused, but he couldn't argue and Scotty added urgently, Captain, we've really got to get going. Right, he muttered, before looking at Khan, you're certain about this? He asked, and Khan answered a little scathingly, don't worry about me, Captain, I am perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Right, Jim muttered again, almost rolling his eyes. He was still hesitant to trust Khan, but at least if all else failed he still had Khan's crew as a last bargaining chip, as long as Asha didn't stab him in the back. Jim paused, however, when he spotted Asha furtively taking Khan's hand into her own, squeezing it as though she needed some reassurance. Khan glanced at her, and, seeing Jim watching them, he murmured in Hindi, I'll be all right, my love. I don't doubt it, she returned in her slightly accented Hindi, but it doesn't stop me worrying, like I know you're worried about me, and our family. Khan simply pressed a soft kiss to the side of Asha's head, ignoring the Enterprise crew's surprised looks, as he murmured softly into Asha's soft red hair, be safe until we meet again. Always, Asha answered as she let go first, taking a step back. There was no longer any time. Before any of the others could speak, Khan had pressed a button and, in a swirl of light, the four others in the bridge disappeared. Asha kept her green eyes fixed on Khan's ice blue ones as she was transported away, and Khan too only watched her as she disappeared, leaving him alone once more on the Vengeance. Asterisk 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 year 1988. Katie raised a brow, her lips twitching slightly in amusement as she stared while Khan scowled at the paper before him. If you have something you want to say, spit it out, Khan finally growled, looking up from the report he'd been trying to read to shoot his sister an irritable look. Katie's amusement only grew, as did the sly smile that spread across her face, and Khan's scowl deepened while Katie said with assumed innocence, "What's the matter, brother dear? Is something weighing on your conscience to make you so sensitive to your dear sister's attentions?" "Dear sister, indeed," Khan scoffed sarcastically. Did I hit the mark?" Katie asked with feigned surprise, hiding her amusement behind a dramatic expression of concern. "Oh dear, but I didn't mean to." "Katie," Khan cut in sharply, his tone warning, and Katie finally laughed. Sorry, she apologized, waving her hands at her brother between her gales of laughter while Khan glared at his sister. "It's just, I can't believe it." "Katie, I'm only going to say this once, get out," Khan bit out, but Katie just pulled a pout as she drawled, but, Khan." "Katie," Khan's eyes had narrowed dangerously, and Katie sniffed, "You're no fun." But even as she spoke, the black-haired female was already jumping to her feet, moving across Khan's office towards the door as she made to leave. Still, it didn't keep her from being quiet as she called over her shoulder, "I have no idea what Asha sees in you sometimes, though I suppose you caving to do what she wants all the time does give you brownie points with her." Khan threw the letter opener on his desk at his sister's head. Luckily, Katie had reached the door and, anticipating the assault, she quickly slammed the door shut behind her, letting the metal blade embed itself into the wood instead of her skull. Temper, brother dear," Katie laughed from behind the door as she walked away, leaving Khan to scowl at the letter opener where it was still vibrating from the force of the impact of hitting the door. If it had been anyone but Katie, she loved to tease him too much, and it certainly wasn't helping that he was feeding her with fuel for her teasing. Khan sighed, glancing back down at the report he'd discarded on his desk. The document was, coincidentally, from Otto as the Augment reported back on his bi-weekly surveillance of Khan's territories across Asia. With almost a fifth of the world's population under his iron reign, Khan took precautions to ensure his territories were secured both externally and internally. After all, it hadn't been even 5 years since he'd expanded his control, and he'd already fended off invaders and dealt with humans trying to stage uprisings against his rule. Khan had heard of several similar occurrences in other Augment-ruled states. In fact, the Augment ruling what had once been Australia was on the verge of losing his position and most likely his life. Khan was keeping a very close eye on that situation. After all, it could be the perfect opportunity for his own troops if Australia's rule fell. Maltuvis, on the other hand, ruled his lands in Central with force to keep his subjects quiet out of fear. From Armando's reports on the situations there, Khan gathered that mass genocide usually followed wherever Maltuvis extended his rule, and it was almost every other day when a human and his family in Maltuvis's lands were executed for some suspected treason or other. Truth be told, Khan did see the appeal and wisdom in Maltuvis's choice of reign. Even now, Khan still didn't really consider regular humans to be worth his time, and it would be much easier to control his people if they were terrified of his mere presence rather than wary of his wrath. It would be, if it weren't for Asha. Khan sighed again, leaving the papers on his desk as he leant back, gazing unseeingly up at the ceiling. He knew some Augments would think him weak, and even he wondered if he was going soft with Asha around. It was unbelievable even to himself sometimes just how much the red-headed woman could influence him. He could just picture what an Augment like Maltuvis would think if he ever found out that the reason for Khan's fair rule and generosity, Katie's words, not his, towards the people he conquered was because of Asha. Well, it wasn't entirely because of her. Asha had never told him to do anything, never except for that one time she'd asked for his promise. And yet, it was because of her that Khan had changed, because he loved her, and she had to love her human parents, had to retain a general softness for humans, if she just distanced herself from the weaker race she'd once been a part of. But, Khan knew deep down inside that despite some inconveniences, he loved Asha all the more for her weakness. Because it wasn't weakness at all, and she'd shown him that there was strength inside even the physically weak. Her respect for people, Augments and humans alike, was born from her innate ability to see the best in people, and she was never disillusioned when faced with cold reality. After all, even if she hated fighting, she did what she had to keep herself and their comrades alive during battles. Khan, speaking of, Khan looked over as Asha walked into his office, her head cocked questioningly at him. "Is everything all right?" Asha questioned, her green eyes flickering over to the papers on his desk before looking back at him in concern. It brought a small smile onto Khan's face, even as the Augment shook his head in response. "It's nothing," Khan replied, and Asha raised a skeptical brow. But Khan just took her hand, drawing her closer and leaning down to kiss her softly, and Asha let the topic drop as she kissed him back with a small sigh. And Khan knew he could never really regret having ordered a fair rule over his territories. He would never tell her so, but Khan would always do anything to keep Asher at his side. And if it took maintaining equality between the humans and augments under his rule to dissipate Asher's reluctance in joining an augment's rule over human lands, Khan was more than willing to pay the small price of arrogant comfort in exchange for the warmth that Asher brought into his life and heart. Chapter 16, Crashing Year 2259. The instant they landed back on the Enterprise, Asher was moving. How'd Khan manage to get us in engineering? Scotty wondered, somewhat impressed, while Jim ran over to the engineering comms desk. Scotty, get Dr. Marcus somewhere safe, Jim ordered, and Scotty moved hastily to prop Carol up as she lay unable to get up with her broken leg. To her credit, she made no protest as Scotty helped her up and moved her to the engineering command chair, even though she had to be in an incredible amount of pain. Spock, you there? Jim called, and Spock's voice replied instantly, Captain, why? I'll explain later. Right now, you've got to keep the ship from falling, Jim interrupted urgently. I'm not sure we'll be able to, Captain, Spock admitted grimly. The engines. Yeah, we've gathered, Jim interrupted as they felt the whole ship shudder, clearly starting its fall towards Earth. Spock, you do whatever you can to divert any remaining power to the stabilizers. We'll get the power back on. Yes, sir, Spock replied, before adding suddenly, and Jim, be careful. I'll try, Jim answered, before he cut off just as a familiar voice called, Captain. Chekhov, Jim said in relief, turning to meet the young navigator and temporary chief engineer during Scotty's absence. Captain, the young man said anxiously in his thick Russian accent as he ran up to Jim, there is not much we can do, Captain. We've got it, Chekhov, don't worry, Jim began, but Scotty cut in as he returned, after strapping Carol into the engineering command chair securely. Even if we get the warp core online, we've still got to redirect the power. He's right, Captain, Chekhov agreed unhappily, and Jim asked, confused, what are you talking about? Someone has to hit the manual override. Scotty turned to Chekhov as he continued quickly, laddie, there's there should be a switch. Asher finished for him as she reappeared beside Jim, making them all jump. Where did you come from? Scotty cried, holding a hand over his heart, but she said sharply, we're on less than 15% power, move it, switch. Behind the deflector dish, Chekhov realized, and he ran off as he shouted back at him, I'll flip the switch. Hurry, Chekhov, Jim called after him as they felt the ship tilt some more. Asher turned to Jim as she said, I've fixed all the wires I can on your damaged warp core, but something's wrong, and I just don't have the knowledge to know what it could be. Oh, here, let me help, Scotty said quickly as he darted towards the core, and Jim met Asher's eyes before she turned and started following Scotty. Asher glanced back, and Jim said seriously, thank you for doing this. Asher met his gaze for a moment, before she turned and said as she hurried after Scotty once more, thank me when we make it out of this, Captain. Asher hurried off to where Scotty was yelling, going to help him as best as she could with both her strength and intellect while Jim glanced around at his damaged ship, praying that Asher was right and they would make it out of this alive. Asterisk 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 aboard the Vengeance. Khan's eyes narrowed as the Vengeance began to fall through Earth's atmosphere. So far, the ship was holding and he still had minimal control over its engines, though, it wouldn't be too much longer, especially now that the ship was being overheated even further thanks to the Earth's gravitational pull dragging it through the atmosphere. The ship jerked violently, and Khan stumbled before glancing up at the screen to see that part of the left hull and the attached fin that aided in the ship's balance and movement had been torn off as he'd fallen deeper into Earth's atmosphere. Shit, he bit out under his breath. This was not good at all. Asterisk 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 year 1987. Why won't you admit it? Khan closed his eyes, trying to ignore his sister, but Katie was not one to be ignored. Khan, I'm being serious, she insisted, and I'm saying it because I care about you. No, you just want another thing to irritate me with, Khan snapped irritably, and Katie raised a brow. Wow, someone's frustrated, she said back, and Khan shot her another unamused look. What? Katie asked, feigning innocence, and Khan massaged his temples as he said distinctly, Katie, leave it. No, Khan ground his teeth, but Katie suddenly sat herself down in front of his desk as she said seriously, Khan, I'm saying this because I care about both of you, and you're being frankly ridiculous. Why won't you tell Asher how you obviously feel? I have no idea what you are talking about, Khan answered with a straight face, but Katie warned, don't you dare lie to me, Khan Noonien Singh. I've known you my whole life and I know when you are lying, even if it's to yourself. Katie, Khan bit out, but she said impatiently, what's so wrong about it? Rivera and McPherson are dating, no problem. It's not uncommon anymore. That isn't the problem, Khan finally snapped, and Katie frowned. Then what is it? Katie demanded, but Khan turned his head away sharply, his jaw clenched tightly. Katie examined him for a long moment before she raised a brow. Oh, I think I see it now. Khan shot his sister another warning look, but Katie ignored it as always as she said with a hint of amusement, "Wow, I'm proud of you, brother. You actually do have a spark of decency as a gentleman." "Katie," Khan warned, but she just chuckled as she shook her head. "Asher's almost 18, Katie pointed out, and Khan replied curtly, "But she is not yet." "So, you know she loves you back," Katie pointed out, but Khan just stood up as he answered, "She is still a minor." Was all Katie said as Khan walked out of the office, leaving his sister to sit and ponder. Asterisk 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 year 2259 aboard the Enterprise. Asher slammed the hull on the engines back into place, finishing with what repair work they could manage but needed to get done if they were going to make it out of this mess alive. Lassie," Scotty began, and Asher glanced at him questioningly. "I just have a wee question, and seeing as we might die in the foreseeable future, I was really hoping you might, answer me, and not." "What is it, Mr. Scotty?" Asher interrupted, wanting him to get to the point. "Well, I was wondering what you said to Khan earlier that made him help us." Scotty explained. "Jim said you spoke a strange language." "Hindi, pardon?" Scotty asked, looking at Asher in confusion as the young woman packed away all the tools she'd used quickly, tucking them away in case they went flying away when the Enterprise tilted. "We spoke in Hindi," Asher explained softly as she worked. "It was the language of Khan's birthplace, and he taught it to me." "Oh, that's nice. And romantic," Scotty muttered, not sure how else to respond, before he returned to his original question as he asked, "But you said something in Hindi, and it was only then that Khan agreed to help us. Can you tell me what you said, in case I ever need to use it, maybe on the captain, when he's being unreasonable?" Asher had gone quiet for a bit, and Scotty wondered if he'd maybe said something he shouldn't have. But before he could open his mouth to say something, anything, Asher said quietly, "I said to him, they remind me of our crew, Khan. They're a family too." Scotty started, staring at her, while Asher finished as she closed the tool cabinet door. "Our crew is our family, Mr. Scotty. More than that, they're all we have left. Khan understands that as well as I do, so he agreed to help." She looked up at him, fixing him with those brilliant green eyes as she said, "So, I hope I don't have to regret getting Khan to help you, Mr. Scotty." Scotty didn't know how to respond to that, but luckily it appeared Asher didn't need a reply as she turned and headed back to where Jim was monitoring the engines from the console. "Scotty, what does this mean?" Jim yelled as he stared at the beeping engineering main console screen. Asher peered over his shoulder, just as Scotty ran up and also took a look at the screen, which was red and flashing the message, "Call misaligned, danger." "Oh no, 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 no," Scotty cried, and Jim demanded, "What?" "The housings are misaligned," Scotty explained. "There's no way we can redirect the power." The trio froze for a moment, and Asher and Jim slowly exchanged looks as Scotty said helplessly, "The ship's dead, sir. She's gone." "No," Jim answered slowly, "she's not." He turned abruptly, and began to run off, while Asher followed him instantly as she called after him, "Is there a way we can realign the core?" "Yeah, it's just not going to be pretty," Jim shouted back as he ran towards the very center of the room, while Scotty ran after him yelling, "Wait, Jim. If we go in there, we'll die." Jim ignored the other man while Asher's eyes narrowed as Scotty cried desperately, "Do you hear me? The radiation will kill us. Will you listen to me?" It was clear Jim wasn't going to, as the young captain stopped before a sealed door, marked with the universal, apparently literally, code for radiation. "What the hell are you doing?" Scotty shouted as he ran up behind Asher, the young woman pausing to watch Jim silently as the captain began punching in buttons on the door's lock. "I'm opening the door," Jim replied to Scotty grimly without even looking up. "I'm going in." "That door is to stop us to get irradiated," Scotty argued as he waved his hand at said core door. "We would be dead before we made the climb." "You two would, I wouldn't." Asterisk 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 year 1987. "Khan," Asher asked as she walked into the older Augment's office, "what is it?" Khan raised his head from where he'd been looking over some documents, and he frowned. "What is what?" he asked, puzzled, and Asher cocked her head as she said expectantly, "You called for me, didn't you? What do you need so late in the night?" "I didn't," Khan broke off abruptly, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Khan," Asher asked, confused now, when he suddenly asked, "Did Katie send you?" "Yeah, why?" Asher asked, and Khan closed his eyes. He was going to kill her, he was going to kill his meddlesome sister, this was going too far. "Khan," he opened his eyes to see Asher frowning at him worriedly as she asked, "Are you okay?" "Fine," he grunted, and she noted dryly, "You don't seem fine, you seem really irritated. What did Katie do? Nothing. Khan sighed as he glanced at the clock on his desk. It was almost midnight already. You don't have to tell me what's wrong, Asha sighed as she made to turn and leave, but if you're fighting with Katie again, just apologize. You know she can be unbearable when she's at odds with you. Asha broke off in surprise as Khan was suddenly behind her, his hand laying over hers on the doorknob. Asha's heartbeat increased a little at the close contact, feeling his breath on her hair as he stood so close his chest was almost touching her back. Khan, Asha asked carefully, trying to keep her tone neutral to hide how she'd suddenly seemed to forget how to breathe. I'm not fighting with Katie, Khan murmured, and Asha swallowed. Oh, she asked, her voice a little strained as her heart hammered in her chest while Khan's breath wafted over the top of her head as he went on, though we might after this. After what? Asha asked confused, when Khan suddenly yanked her away from the door as he simultaneously locked it. Khan, Asha asked in confusion as he pulled her to the other side of the office, and Khan shushed her, sh. What is it? Asha asked in a quieter voice, bewildered as she glanced between Khan and the office door. Katie was hiding on the other side, Khan explained in a whisper, and Asha frowned. Are you sure? She asked. She hadn't heard Katie at all, and even if her ears were a little weaker than Khan's, she should have been able to pick up on it if there had been any sound. Positive, Khan answered, still speaking softly. I guess she's probably been hiding there since you came in. Why? Asha wondered, and Khan glanced at the clock. Probably because she wanted to eavesdrop on this, perverted girl as she is, he replied, and before Asha could let his words fully sink in, Khan had leaned down and captured her lips with his own. Asha froze as Khan kissed her, her eyes going wide with shock. It wasn't a long kiss, and Khan broke the sweet little kiss quickly as he leant back again with a smirk while Asha gawked at him. What was that for? Asha asked, her voice sounding a little high, and Khan's smile widened. Happy birthday, Asha. Asha blinked, before glancing at the clock on Khan's desk to see it was indeed past midnight and so officially her birthday. Okay, thanks, Asha began, but Khan's smile just widened as he leant in close to her face again. Whoa, hang on, Asha stammered, starting to back away, and Khan teased, scared? More like, why are you doing this? Asha squeaked, as Khan's hands wrapped around her waist, trapping her against him, and Khan grinned. Well, it wasn't how I planned it to go, he admitted quietly, but, I'm doing this, Asha, his gaze softened, because I love you. Asha blinked, staring at him as his words sank in, before she went bright red with embarrassment and a little bit of happiness. What? She began, when Khan leant in to kiss her again. Your answer? He asked as he broke off from their second kiss, and Asha smiled. I love you, too, obviously Khan, Asha answered, her own smile widening as she saw the way Khan's eyes lit up at her words. He bent his head to kiss her again, which she responded to enthusiastically, while outside the office Katie cursed Khan for figuring things out. It had been the one in a million chances to hear Khan actually say the words, I love you, and she had missed it. Damn you, Khan, Katie muttered as she walked off to let the new couple inside have some real privacy. Well, I hope you two find happiness, you idiot.